My best friend suggested I test my husband with some lingerie. And that's how I discovered a shocking secret. Chapter 1. That day was the 12th anniversary of my marriage to John. I had spent the entire afternoon shopping for fresh ingredients and preparing a sumptuous dinner. Lighting candles, burning incense, and filling 2 glasses with wine, I finally exhaled with satisfaction. It was already dark outside, yet John hadn't come home. I frowned and sent him a message. "Why aren't you home yet?" A few minutes later, my phone screen lit up with his reply. "At a business dinner, we'll be home late. Love you." A smile crept onto my lips. After 12 years of marriage, our relationship had only grown closer. John was a considerate man, never one for sweet talk but always reassuring me with his morning kisses and updates on his schedule. I bragged about him to my friends, but my best friend scoffed. Men are fickle. They say one thing and do another behind your back. Be careful not to be deceived. Seeing my disbelief, she handed me a black bag with a mischievous smile. "Here, give him a special gift for your 12th anniversary." It was a piece of black lingerie. Seeing my blushing face, she winked playfully. "Don't you want to know how he feels about you now? Why not use this to test him? But our daughter is at home." I hesitated. "So what? Emma is so well behaved. Just tell her not to disturb you tonight." My friend was nonchalant. Holding the bag, my heart pounded with excitement and anticipation. Thinking about the lingerie hidden in the closet, my smile grew wider. I touched up my makeup, applied the lipstick John had given me, and sprayed some perfume on my neck. As I walked out of the bathroom, I glanced at my daughter's bedroom door. Emma was indeed very obedient, staying in her room all evening except for bathroom breaks. This thought filled my eyes with tenderness. John returned home just before midnight. I walked up to him, half concerned and half complaining. "Why are you so late today?" "Business dinner, the boss wouldn't let anyone leave early." He laughed, handing me his coat. "Honey, could you hang this up for me?" I smiled and took his coat, but my expression changed. The scent of osmanthus on the coat was familiar. Half a month ago, while sorting John's clothes, I had smelled this same feminine fragrance. I confronted him about it, and he had solemnly assured me that he would never betray me and asked me not to let baseless suspicions ruin our relationship. I felt terribly guilty then and became even more accommodating, never doubting him again. Even though the scent had lingered around me for the past half-month, never fading. "You've worked hard, honey. The dinner looks amazing." He admired my efforts and praised me as I had hoped. "Of course. It's our anniversary." I snapped out of my thoughts. A flash of awkwardness crossed his face, quickly covered by a forced smile, but I saw it all. My heart sank. "Yes, our anniversary. I was just about to mention it," he said, pulling me to sit by the table. Under the candlelight, I noticed his pale face. John praised each dish but soon got up, stretched, and said he was full and needed a bath. I sat stiffly, staring at his untouched chopsticks, feeling uneasy. "Want to know how he feels about you? Just test him." My friend's suggestive words echoed in my mind. With that thought, I hurried back to the bedroom, changed into the anniversary gift, and struck a sexy pose like the actresses in the posters. As John's footsteps approached, my heart raced. "Honey, you look stunning today." John saw the gift and leaned in, kissing me lightly on the lips. I closed my eyes shyly, waiting for his next move. But he let go of me, took off his bathrobe, pulled the blanket over his head, and soon started snoring. Feeling awkward, I pulled the blanket off his head. "John, it's our anniversary, I want to." I froze mid-sentence. A clear mark was visible on his back. "What's this on your back?" I asked coldly. John turned to face me, silent. The osmanthus scent, his late return, the untouched dinner, the mark on his back all pointed to a harsh truth. "Are you seeing someone else?" My voice trembled, weak, tears welling up from the intensity of my emotions. "Honey, don't you believe me? I'm just tired today, John panicked, gripping my hand tightly, desperately trying to prove his innocence. His excuses only seemed ridiculous to me. "Mom, weren't you planning to surprise Dad? Why are you crying?" At that moment, the door opened and our daughter Emma stood there, clutching something, her eyes filled with fear. "It's nothing, sweetie. Go back to sleep. You have school tomorrow." I wiped my tears, forcing a smile. "Mom, Dad hurt his back getting my books earlier. I came to give him some ointment." Emma approached John, dabbing ointment on the red mark and blowing on it gently. I was stunned, realizing it was just a misunderstanding. Thinking about my aggressive behavior earlier, my cheeks burned with embarrassment. At that moment, all I felt was guilt and regret, not suspecting how coincidental my daughter's appearance was. Nor did I realize the huge secret my well-behaved daughter was hiding. Chapter 2. To make up for the commotion the previous night, I got up early and prepared warm soybean milk and fried dough sticks. John didn't mention the incident again, but there was an undeniable awkwardness between us. Emma whispered in my ear, "Mom, I want to stay at Grandma's for a few days." I was startled. "Why do you want to go to Grandma's?" "Because I miss her," she answered loudly, then lowered her voice. "And I want to give you and Dad more space." I blushed deeply, touched by my daughter's thoughtfulness, and agreed without hesitation. "I'll drive Emma to Grandma's after school today," John said, doting on our daughter. Feeling guilty towards him, I didn't think much and agreed. That afternoon, while tidying Emma's room, I found a packed bag by the bed, obviously forgotten by the careless father and daughter. "How careless," I muttered with a smile, picking up the bag. I thought for a moment and then took a box of bird's nest from the cupboard. Since I was going, I might as well visit my mother-in-law. As I sat in the taxi, I sighed at the thought of seeing my mother-in-law. In 12 years of marriage to John, I could say I was satisfied with everything but the relationship with my mother-in-law. She always looked down on me, thinking I was wealthy but uneducated, and that her son had suffered a huge injustice by marrying me. The first time John brought me home, she smashed her bowl to the ground and stormed off, leaving John and me embarrassed. Despite my family's opposition, I married him, ignoring my mother-in-law's hostility. To avoid conflict, I visited her only during holidays. This way, life was relatively peaceful. John once told me that his parents divorced early, and his grandmother raised him single-handedly. Her bad temper was understandable. I hadn't realized that my mother-in-law's hostility stemmed from her hatred towards me. She hated me for not giving her a grandson and for not stepping aside sooner for that other woman. My mother-in-law lived in an old neighborhood where arguments could be heard throughout the building. As I reached her door, I found it slightly ajar, with voices coming from inside. There were 4 pairs of shoes at the door, one pair of women's shoes catching my attention. A voice hit me like a brick. "Lily, have some soup. Your body isn't like Emily's. You need to take good care of yourself to give me a fat grandson." Emily was my name. And the speaker was my mother-in-law, who usually showed me no mercy. Peeking through the door, I felt my legs weaken. On the sofa, a pregnant woman lay in John's arms being fed soup. My mother-in-law held her hand, smiling. That smile pierced my heart. After 12 years of marriage, my mother-in-law had never given me a kind look, yet she was doting on a mistress. Where was Emma? What had they done to my daughter? I shuddered. "Mom, I miss you so much." Emma suddenly appeared, hugging the woman's neck and kissing her. "I'm sick of calling a stranger Mom every day." A stranger? My fingers trembled. My daughter called someone else Mom and referred to me as a stranger. Sick? She saw my care and love as sickening. The woman laughed, tweaking Emma's nose. "Bear with it a little longer. Once Mom marries Dad, you'll never have to live with that woman again." John smiled and agreed. A breeze carried the familiar scent of osmanthus. I finally understood the source of last night's fiasco. Chapter 3. I don't remember how I managed to pick up the bags and turn around, or how I got home. I just wanted a definitive answer. Thinking this, I called a private investigator. My mind was filled with a guess, a suspicion that could turn my 12-year marriage upside down. A few days later, the private investigator's report confirmed my fears. Miss Emily, your husband is indeed having an affair. The woman's name is Lily, and she's 5 months pregnant. He sent me some photos via email. When I opened them, my head buzzed, and I had to hold onto the table to stay upright. The photos showed a happy family of 3, playing at an amusement park, shopping together, doing what a family should do. Only, the woman in my place wasn't me. Thinking of the times I received John's fake schedule updates and excuses of being busy, my heart turned cold. He had been with another woman all along, with our daughter. And I've learned that your husband has been in frequent contact with a lawyer named Mark. Here's his contact information, you might find it useful. The private investigator lowered his voice. I heard this guy has been struggling to get his kid into an international primary school. Calmly, I thanked him and called Mark. Mark wasn't a stranger. He was John's good friend, and our families had dined together. At the table, he called me sister-in-law with a smile, yet behind my back, he conspired with John. I was curious, would he choose his child's future or his friend's reputation? Mark, it's Emily. He paused, surprised. Then, covering his surprise, he laughed. Sister-in-law, what can I do for you? Mark, I know about John's affair. I got straight to the point. I just need to know what he's been consulting you about. Is it a divorce agreement? Haha, sister-in-law, are you and John fighting again? Don't overthink it. Mark played dumb. I didn't want to waste time. Mark, I heard you're struggling to get your kid into a private international school. My friend's husband is the vice principal there. You know, I'd hate not to help you. The line was silent. How about we meet at the Starbucks on Main Street in half an hour? He finally replied. When he arrived, he handed me a stack of documents. This is what John has been consulting me about. See for yourself. I took it, and the bold letters stabbed my eyes. Life insurance beneficiary payout after death. A chill crept up my spine. Why? He hates me so much. Why not just divorce me? Why kill me? Maybe seeing my distress, or maybe swayed by my offer, Mark spilled everything. Initially, John did consider a divorce. But since you had a prenuptial agreement, he wouldn't get a dime. He didn't want to leave empty-handed, so Lily suggested this plan. What a scheme! I was so furious my hands shook. I remembered John's proposal coinciding with my parents' company going public and the stock market booming. My parents gave me a substantial sum for our future home. The month after the company went public, John proposed with a grand setup, and I accepted, not feeling it was a coincidence but rather a double blessing. My parents were against the marriage, suspecting John wanted money. Why propose at such a critical time? To prove his sincerity, I suggested a prenuptial agreement which he readily agreed to. I thought it proved his love and eased my parents' concerns. I never imagined John would be so ruthless as to plan my demise for money. But what did Lily do to make John willing to commit a crime? I still wondered. If it was just for money, I doubted he'd have the guts. A son. The baby she's carrying is a boy. John treasures him and promised to do anything if she gives birth to a son. So, it was for a son. I laughed bitterly. John had played the good guy, preaching gender equality, while secretly plotting for a son at any cost. Anything, including killing me. I clenched my fists. Why were they so cruel, so determined to destroy me? Sister-in-law, I agree John is despicable. But he's been my brother for years, I couldn't just refuse him. Mark smiled obsequiously, handing me a coffee. Not wanting to entangle with him further, I grabbed my bag and left. Behind me, I heard Mark loudly cursing John, amplifying his voice. Chapter 4. I returned home, opened the drawer in my bedroom, and took out my accidental life insurance policy, laughing bitterly. Recently, John had suddenly bought insurance for me. He explained that a good buddy of his worked for an insurance company and was short on his monthly quota, so all his friends bought insurance to help him out. Why don't you buy one for yourself too? Name Emma as the beneficiary. That way, if something happens to us, Emma's life will still be secure. I told John seriously. At that time, he mumbled something about the company already having a group policy for him and quickly changed the subject. I didn't pursue it further. Thinking back now, it was chilling. I flipped open the insurance policy, and the beneficiary column was filled with the 3 characters. John. He had planned everything meticulously, but I had been foolishly unaware. I turned around and faced my daughter's room. Emma's call of stranger echoed in my mind, piercing my nerves. For 12 years, my daughter had been so obedient and endearing in front of me, but it had all been an act. Perhaps behind my back, she had cursed me countless times, even wishing for my death like Lily. I felt an immense chill in my heart. Seeing the strands of hair scattered on my daughter's bed, I suddenly had an impulse. I quickly picked up the hair and prepared to take it to the hospital for a DNA test. Before leaving, I noticed a short hair stuck on John's jacket. I plucked it off and held it in my hand. When the test results came back, it turned out that I was not Emma's biological mother. The daughter I had loved wholeheartedly for 12 years was not my biological child. But the bigger irony was that the report showed that John was not her biological father either. Looking at the DNA test results, I understood everything. 12 years ago, John had secretly swapped my daughter with Lily's, attempting a silent takeover. But he hadn't anticipated that the daughter he had schemed so hard for was not even his own child. All that remained in my heart was deep hatred. John and Lily had stolen my child and were plotting to kill me for insurance money, living their delusional dreams. I called a private investigator, instructing him to find out who Emma's biological father was. Since they had been so ruthless, they shouldn't blame me, Emily, for being merciless. What they owed me, I would make them return tenfold. Chapter 5. I maintained my composure until my daughter returned from her grandmother's house. Even though John's clothes still reeked of osmanthus perfume, and I saw him repeatedly giving me murderous looks through reflective glass, I endured it all. The more I acted this way, the more he let down his guard, even treating me a bit better out of a guilty conscience. In his eyes, I was nothing more than a lamb to be slaughtered. Little did he know, this lamb was secretly planning her revenge feast. Emma, do you know why that girl from your class transferred to another school? One evening, I casually approached Emma, pretending to gossip. Why, Mom? Emma blinked her big eyes, looking innocent, but a hint of wariness flashed beneath. Don't tell anyone, okay? I lowered my voice. That girl's mom had a baby boy and wanted to save money for his future, so they sacrificed her and transferred her to a worse school. Emma's face turned pale. Actually, a lot of parents nowadays want a second child just to have a boy. I said loudly, deliberately letting John overhear as he walked by. Sure enough, before Emma could react, John stormed over, yelling. Emily, what are you telling Emma? You can't say such things to a child. I stuck out my tongue, not continuing. But I knew my goal had been achieved. Emma was in her teenage years, the most sensitive and suspicious time. John's scolding would seem like panicked denial to a rebellious teenager like Emma. I bet she would soon fall into my trap. As expected, later that evening, Emma approached me while John was in the shower. Mom, was what you said earlier true? Yes, sweetheart. Actually, your grandmother has always wanted a grandson. She's mentioned it to me many times. But I felt that having you was enough, so I didn't respond. You know, I've never gotten along well with your grandmother, and I think that's probably why. Oh, I shouldn't be saying this. Your grandmother loves you very much, she really does. I pretended to be remorseful, slapping my own mouth. Emma's face turned pale. She said goodnight and left the room, nearly bumping into John. Watch where you're going. What's wrong with this kid, so absent-minded? John, in a bad mood, scolded her. I sat on the bed, watching the growing hatred in Emma's eyes, and smiled. The next day, the private investigator called to inform me that he had found Emma's biological father, a man named David, who was Lily's first love. The evidence was a prenatal checkup report from a certain hospital, with the family signatures clearly showing David and Lily's names. David is a gambler deeply in debt and constantly on the run from his creditors. Lily broke up with him because he was useless and then hooked up with John. The private investigator explained in detail. Initially, David even came to cause trouble, demanding to see the child. Lily paid him hush money every month to keep him quiet. I nodded. Throwing money around, who couldn't do that? Especially when part of the money Lily used belonged to me. I successfully lured David out by offering to pay off his debts. Lily, does that name ring a bell? I smiled at him. Her daughter, Emma, is your child, right? Before he could react, I pushed a card towards him. This is a small token from me. I need someone to tell her current husband the truth at the right time. The amount on the card was enough for David to pay off all his debts. Coincidentally, I had been tightening my control over John's finances lately, and Lily hadn't been able to pay the hush money for 2 months. Eyeing the substantial sum, David agreed readily. Good things come in pairs. As soon as I got home, I received a call from the private investigator, informing me that Emma had skipped school for a day and had a big fight at Lily's house. In her anger, Lily slapped her, cursing that a daughter like her wasn't worth having. Words bring disaster, but Lily didn't know that. That night, John called, urgently saying that his mother was hospitalized, and he might need to take care of her for a while and couldn't come home. Feigning worry, I said, "Oh no, is Mom okay? I'll come over right now." "Which hospital is it?" "Don't cause trouble. Just stay home." John snapped, hanging up. I chuckled coldly and connected to the private investigator's video call. The private investigator, sitting by the next hospital bed, aimed the camera at the noisy trio, giving me a live broadcast of the drama. John was at the hospital, not because his mother was ill, but because Emma had pushed Lily down the stairs in a fit of rage. Lily lay on the hospital bed, pale and listening to the doctor announce the loss of her baby. Worse, the incident had been so severe that it had severely damaged her uterus, making it impossible for her to conceive again. John sat nearby, holding his head, lost in thought. Emma stood aside, her face white with fear. Suddenly, John jumped up, grabbed Emma by the collar, and roared, "You killed my son!" Emma, her eyes red, retorted, "So you care about your son, huh?" Ignoring Lily's attempts to intervene, John slapped Emma hard several times. The girl stood there stunned, her fair cheeks swelling red. "If you don't want a daughter, just get rid of me. Get rid of me." Emma screamed, drawing the attention of nearby patients. Watching the once harmonious family fall apart, I felt a surge of satisfaction. But this was just the beginning. The real show was yet to come. I bided my time, waiting for Lily to be discharged, and then called John, telling him I was going to my parents' house for a few days. John, not knowing what to feel, grunted and told me to pass on his regards. I double-checked the tiny cameras hidden around the house and quietly left, awaiting the drama to unfold. As expected, John brought Lily back to our home to take care of her. After all, they had a secret binding them, and breaking up was not an option. Watching John help Lily into the room we had lived in for 12 years, my feelings were complicated, my hatred deepening. I called David, telling him it was time for his grand entrance. At 7 in the evening, John wrapped a towel around himself and went to shower, while Lily sat cross-legged on the sofa, laughing at the TV. Before he went to the bathroom, they hugged and kissed each other, exchanging sweet words. John, who had never spoken such words to me, showered them upon Lily. "Wait till I get back," he said, aroused, and hurried to the bathroom. I sneered, thinking that the one waiting for you might not be who you expect. The doorbell rang, and Lily opened the door, her face changing dramatically. "Get out!" she yelled, trying to push David out, but she was no match for the strong man. He barged in, shouting, "Lily, you shameless woman, give me back my daughter." John, fresh out of the shower, walked right into the scene. "Who are you?" He pointed at David, half surprised, half angry. Well, isn't this the cuckolded fool? Where's my daughter? When will you return her?" David, a scoundrel for years, had the perfect tone to infuriate. "My daughter?" John glanced at Lily, who remained silent, making him suspicious. I watched his face darken, feeling a surge of satisfaction. "John, after all your scheming, the joke's on you. Of course, Emma is my daughter. Or do you think she's yours?" David didn't like ambiguous endings, loudly revealing the truth. "Lily was already pregnant with my child when she broke up with me. She only found you because I was broke and useless. But hey, buddy, I should thank you for raising my daughter all these years. Who knows how she would have ended up with me?" John's face turned black. "Get out! Get out, you lunatic!" Lily screamed, trying to push David, but John stopped her. "Keep talking." John, beyond anger, was eerily calm. "I know this woman will say anything for money." David pulled 2 papers from his pocket, shaking them before throwing them at John. "See for yourself." One was a DNA test report, the other proof of Lily and David's prenatal checkup. I had given these crucial props to David early on to ensure John wouldn't doubt. John gripped the papers tightly, his jaw clenching. With both testimonial and physical evidence, Lily couldn't talk her way out. It was time to watch the show. I made myself a cup of tea and gave David a signal to leave. "Hand over my daughter's custody. I doubt you can teach her anything good." David muttered, leaving. The door clicked shut as David used my key to lock it. I didn't want any actors leaving early. The 2 inside, lost in their thoughts, didn't notice the slight sound. Watching John turn to Lily with a dark expression, I knew the show had begun. Chapter 6. "John, you can't believe that lunatic. He's just jealous of my life and wants to ruin it." Lily tried her usual tricks, crying and making a scene. Without the protection of a baby boy, and with John knowing he had been cuckolded, his anger was uncontrollable. "Feeling guilty? The DNA report is clear. Open your eyes and look." John, his face twisted, threw the evidence at her. "It's fake! It's fake!" She screamed, trying to destroy the evidence, but John grabbed her hands and slapped her. Watching the loving couple turn on each other, I sneered. "So what if Emma isn't your child? You only wanted a son." Lily, driven by anger, stood up and shouted back. "Yes, I did everything for you. Where's my son? Your bastard daughter killed him." John, losing his mind, was terrifying. Slap! He hit her, then grabbed a pillow from the sofa, beating her while cursing. "You deceitful woman! I should never have trusted you. You cuckolded me and killed my son. I'll make you pay." Lily, losing her strength, sat on the floor, beaten into a pulp. She cried and ranted, blaming John's indecisiveness for her misery. "If you had acted sooner, I wouldn't be like this." She cried, her makeup smeared. "You dare blame me? If you hadn't pushed me to have a son, I wouldn't have handed Emily's daughter to traffickers. I broke the law for you, and you watched from the sidelines. I've had enough of you." John, enraged, grabbed a lamp and smashed it over her head. "Ah!" Lily, reaching for a fruit knife, stabbed wildly. Her force and a hit to a vital spot made John grunt and collapse unconscious. Lily, terrified, tried to run but found the door locked. She cried and banged, but it wouldn't budge. She collapsed, trembling, unable to look at the body nearby. I called the police, feeling relieved. Watching Lily being pinned down by the police, too despairing to stand, filled me with satisfaction. One dead, one in jail. They got what they deserved. John, due to excessive blood loss, died on the spot. His mother rushed over, only to find his stiff body. She screamed, trying to attack Lily, but the police held her back. Her extreme agitation caused a stroke. Even after treatment, she ended up a vegetable, dependent on care. But with John dead and her ex-husband long gone, who would care for an old, frail woman? Her future was bleak. After this drama, I received a call from the police station. It was time to confront Lily. Chapter 7. Lily, charged with attempted murder, was facing a cold prison life. In the interrogation room, she sobbed, apologizing for her mistakes. I didn't want her apologies. Coldly, I asked. 12 years ago, you swapped my child. Where is she now? She froze, then cried louder. It was all John's idea. He suggested selling the child to traffickers for money and to cover it up. Please forgive me, I don't know anything else. My heart ached, and I asked, do you remember what the trafficker looked like? How could I remember after 12 years? She said truthfully. But I recall it was a middle-aged woman with a large mole on her temple. I staggered out of the police station, not immediately returning home. I sat at a street corner crying. My daughter had suffered for 12 years under traffickers, while these two lived freely around me. Now, they had their comeuppance, but my daughter, she was still lost. Feeling immense guilt, I sold everything John had left, using all my resources to find my daughter's whereabouts. I practically wore out the doors of every police station in the city, but my daughter remained missing. Chapter 8. 2 years later, one morning, I received a call from the police station. They had recently captured a gang of human traffickers who had been operating for 15 years. Among them might be the one who took my daughter. After 2 years of constant disappointment, I had lost hope. Such news no longer excited me, as it always ended in disappointment. Over time, I became numb and pained by such news. But eventually, I still got dressed and headed to the familiar police station. The police led me to a room, and as the door opened, a dozen pairs of eyes turned to me. I shuddered, spotting a woman in the corner with a mole on her temple. My fists clenched involuntarily. If I could, I would shoot this woman, aiming right at the mole to pierce her head. I walked up to her, looked down, and asked the question that had been etched into my bones for 2 years. 14 years ago, at City Hospital, did a man and a woman sell you a newborn baby girl? Yes. She nodded, glancing fearfully at the armed police around. I wouldn't normally remember so clearly, but City Hospital was my first job, and the baby was so small, so I remembered. My vision darkened, and my legs nearly gave out. Steadying myself, I stared at her, asking, where is she now? Sold to Dafu Mountain as a child bride. I don't know what happened after that. Dafu Mountain, a mountainous area in this province known for its feudal mindset and poverty. My eyes burned with rage, wanting to tear this woman apart. Do you remember the buyer's name? The police sympathetically seated me and continued questioning. No, but it was either the village head or deputy head's family. She muttered, her eyes darting around, making me nauseous. I need to go to Dafu Mountain now. My daughter, my daughter. Overwhelmed, I was incoherent. The police supported me, nodding. Miss Emily, we'll take you to find your daughter. I left the police station, hailed a taxi, and raced towards the airport. At the police station, they had told me to contact the local police once I landed, and they would assist in finding my daughter. My daughter, who had suffered for 14 years, Mommy is coming to take you home. On the plane, clutching my ticket, everything felt like a dream, a never-ending nightmare. The discounted ticket cost only $100, yet it was the most significant expense I'd made on myself since I started searching for my daughter. Over the past 2 years, I had exhausted all my resources to find my long-lost daughter. As the plane slowly descended, my heart raced and my blood seemed to boil. Once on the ground, I rushed to the local police station that oversaw Dafu Mountain. With the police leading the way, we arrived at the village head's house. Along the way, countless little girls stood at their doorways, biting their fingers, looking at us with longing eyes. Where did they come from? Were they also sold by traffickers? Were their biological parents still searching for them? By the time we reached the house where my daughter had been sold, my eyes were already filled with tears. Hearing the knock on the door, we heard footsteps from the courtyard. I took a deep breath, closing my eyes, almost afraid to see who would appear before me. Silence. Opening my eyes, I was handed a small handkerchief. Before me stood a thin, frail girl, timidly asking, "Auntie, why are you crying? Auntie, look at us. Don't we look alike?"